Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran jazz vocalist Peter Eldridge. He teamed up with the very talented pianist Kenny Werner on their latest 2019 CD called Somewhere, a sumptuous album of ballads featuring a lush string orchestra, featuring classic standards and clever originals, pairing timeless romanticism with sophisticated modern harmony. This collaboration was a long-time dream for the two veteran musicians who were colleagues at the Berklee College of Music. Backed by a 20-piece string orchestra, this sounds like a major Hollywood production, and he's got great insights into it. So please get to know this project and dig this interview, my friends.
So, Peter, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. So I want to talk to you about your latest album, Somewhere, with Kenny Werner, and I had the pleasure of interviewing him probably 4 or 5 months ago, and he is an amazing human being, and I can only imagine that, you sparking a relationship with him at Berklee years ago and kind of having this on the back burner was always probably in your mind, and it was probably a joy to actually get to see this come to fruition.
Oh yeah, it was years in the making. I think we actually knew each other. We both, I think, we both started teaching at Berklee right around the same time. I taught at the Manhattan School of Music for years, and I think Kenny was doing a variety. He was at NYU for a long time, but I want to say it was 10 years ago. He asked me to record vocals on a song of his, and I thought it was going to be just he and I in a studio with him playing piano and me singing, and I walked into the studio and there's about a 45-piece string orchestra and trio is standing in front of me, and I much to my shock and surprise, it ended up being this full-on symphony, string orchestra, beautiful romantic ballad, and it was just such a ball to be able to sing in the middle of all that. After we were done, Kenny and I, we were both like, God, we should do a whole project like this, and and then fast forward about I don't know, at least 10 years, if not more. We started putting the pieces together to do this project Somewhere, and we're just really happy that it's finally seeing the light of day now. Yeah.
It almost sounds like a Hollywood production hired you to do this. There's such a grandiose, powerful feeling to this. Was that the vision going in, that we're going to make something that's going to have so much sound you're almost not going to know what to do with it?
I meat think that was a choice, between the two of us. We both loved those great recordings of, Sinatra and Nelson Riddle and, Nat King Cole and George Shearing in orchestra. They just had such a specific sound and were so full-bodied and so rich that even, Kenny talked about, the Mantovani Orchestra, that sort of, over-the-top, slightly over-the-top sound. And so we definitely, it was a concerted effort to really try to put that across with this material. We kind of, with the material that was part of this project, it sort of modernized, it couldn't help but modernize the template a little bit, but we were definitely thinking in terms of that kind of, early 1960s, late 50s kind of sound.
The beauty of the way we look at life is once we get away from something, that retrospective 2020 thing kicks in. What did you learn about yourself as a musician, or yourself in a duo situation, or just in general, what did you get from yourself from this project that you didn't realize before? Well,
it was the first time I ever really just stood up in front of, when I perform on my own, and in New York Voices, that's its own particular bag. And when I do my solo stuff, I'm usually playing piano in a trio or a quartet setting, or sometimes a duo setting. And the piano has always been my security blanket. I played piano long before I started singing, and so I hold on to that, and I have my relationship with playing is pretty deep. So to just kind of stand up and sing, it was a pretty different and new mindset for me. I really felt like I was wearing a different hat than I'd had before, and my job was just to try to bring the lyrics across as best I could. I think with these kind of great tunes, the lyric is kind of the number one priority. You just really want to try to color and present and put the emotion behind these lyrics on top of everything else, on top of how gorgeous the strings are, and whether it's a tune of Kenny's or something like A Time for Love, a classic like that, or perhaps a tune of mine, that you're just trying to put on the right character for each song, and I really tried to do that. I hope I was successful, but that was definitely kind of felt a little different for me than past projects, certainly.
If you brought this to Kansas City, I could see this being at the Kauffman Center, which is a beautiful event space here in Kansas City. And just for the sake of, you wouldn't have any problem selling tickets, but just for the sake of our interview, if you had to verbally sell this project right now or write up a release to say, hey, this is what we're going to give you during a night of listening to me and Kenny, how would you describe it?
We always call this album the Lush Project, and I actually thought we were going to end up calling the album the Lush Project because it's just that feeling. It's a bunch of music that the goal we both had in putting this music together was that it was just music for the soul, music to make people feel, and to the songs we included they deal with life, they deal with the passage of time, they deal with love, and I think it's just, we were really trying to make that the forefront. It wasn't like, hey, let's do a jazz album or let's do an album that sounds like 50 years ago. It was just like, let's just do a beautiful project with what songs we both really like and just make them as emotional and artful and soulful as we can.
You've done that, and I've really, really enjoyed this album. And Peter, thank you for taking a minute out. It's great to catch up with you. And good luck with this album.
Thanks so much. I hope we do get out to Kansas City. Put in a good word for us.
I always do.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and singers in Boston, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world. And thanks to Peter for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.